So I've been seeing some more videos about it. And listen, I gotta be honest. I seen the comments, right, from the last video that I made. And I totally understand the premise that a lot of y'all make. For example, talking about how some people are taking advantage. I hear you on that. But I also feel like y'all didn't hear me when I said in the other video that it's a very small percentage, right? But I understand where that comes from because yeah, the idea is a little heinous for real. Like the idea that you're spending money, you the hard-working 9 to 5er, right? Or like whether you work for yourself or you're 9 to 5 or whatever the case may be. But here you are working hard, busting your ass to provide for your own family, and we're getting taxed to death. And meanwhile, the entire time you're also having to spend money for some people who, yes, unfortunately are taking advantage of the system. But again, at the same time though, that's not everybody, you know what I mean? And I think for a lot of people, especially guys, which was my original argument the entire time, like the idea that you're celebrating someone else's like calamity. Listen, however you feel about it is how you feel about it. I know, again, based off some of the comments, a lot of you are like happy this is happening, which again, I think it's crazy. And I think if you're one of the guys who are willing to pay for for lack of a better word, pay for pussy, or be transactional, and try and take advantage of someone who's going through something like this, I don't know, dog. To me, I just think it's slimy. It is what it is. Your opinions are your opinions. I got my own, and I just think it's slimy. But moreover than that, if there's anything I've noticed these days, is that society has definitely become less empathetic. And I'm not perfect. You know what I mean? Like I'm not the nicest person in the world. Sometimes I often think I'm not likable, which I mean that's neither here nor there. But I say all that to say, like, I'm not chastising, right? Like, I know I might have some opinions on some things, but I'm not necessarily condemning, but I'm also not condoning. You know what I mean? Like, I have my opinion and I'll have my stance on certain things, but that's about it. At the end of the day, it's your life, right? Like, how you decide to live it is how you decide to live it. Who am I to tell you any different? Like, you're a grown adult. At least I hope so. If you're watching this, you're a grown adult. You make your own decisions, and that's about it. But if there's anything I've noticed is that society has definitely become a lot darker. And, I think that's just because of all the external pressures that we're all facing. Like BlackRock buying all the cribs. It's getting harder to buy shit. Things are way more expensive. And I think we're all finding ourselves in these, like, precarious predicaments in which, we're thinking to ourselves, like, the squirrels are going crazy, y'all. Forgive me. But, I think we find ourselves in this crazy predicament as to where, we're thinking to ourselves, like, how much longer can this go on? I think we're all thinking that to an extent. The idea, like, how much more can they push us? Like, how much more can they take advantage of the hardworking person? This is another part of my argument. People are upset that people on SNAP are being taken advantage of, but what about the government? What about the government? Is the government not taking advantage of its own constituents? I'm not trying to make this a political video, but I think regardless of who you voted for, I think one has to admit, like, yo, to an extent, we've been swindled. And it's okay to admit that. I think it's perfectly fine to admit that. To some extent, we've been swindled, and, it is what it is going forward. I mean, the American people have to decide what they want to define them. And, we find ourselves in these moments time and time again where we can have change, but people are just so apprehensive. Like, again, I said I wasn't going to make this political, but this is the last point I'll say. As a New Yorker, a lot of people have opinions for Mom Donnie or whatever the case may be. And listen, say what you want. I think it was the best choice. Between everybody else that was running, I mean, think Curtis Sliwa came in dead last. Dead last. So that tells you everything you need to know. And on top of that, Cuomo lost by a wide margin. The only borough that voted for him, by and large, is Staten Island, unfortunately. But that's neither here nor there. Moreover, I think at the end of the day, a lot of people have opinions about how things are going, or just how things, you know, are changing in this country. And say what you will about it, I think we could all benefit from not necessarily being nicer, right? Like, this isn't a campaign for me to say to be more empathetic, but more so in the sense, like, I don't know, I think it would be much more conducive, excuse me, it'd be much more conducive if we spent our time focused on our goals and the things that we need to take care of, as opposed to, you know, either staying in echo chambers and regurgitating some of the lines that we hear, whether that be, you know, either side or, you know, whatever you follow, or, you know, just stepping more into being leaders of our own communities. You know what I mean? I think to a certain extent, especially for guys, we all have not a duty, but, you know, to take out some form of leadership somewhere, you know, in some sense. And that doesn't mean every guy has to do that, but that's just my perspective. Because at the end of the day, the only reason why things have become this dark, or quote unquote dark, or this hopeless, is simply because of the lack of leadership. And again, regardless of who you voted for, you have to admit this country as a whole right now doesn't necessarily have, you know, straightforward governance in a sense that is conducive or makes sense for everyone, you know. And again, not trying to make this political, but I don't know, that's my thought. I'm fried right now. It's Monday, so that's all I gotta say. It's a pretty short video, but for the most part, I don't know, that was just some thoughts I wanted to follow up with. I think times are changing, and at the rate at which, you know, things are happening so fast that people have no choice but to react negatively, because, you know, when you lack knowledge, that's when you do things that, you know, are rather sporadic. So, I don't know, son, keep your head on the swivel. Keep your head on the swivel, don't do anything stupid, and, you know, at the end of the day, again, you just gotta be more focused on what you want and what you're trying to obtain, as opposed to what's happening around you. Because I also think, here's what I'll say in closing, I also think it's very easy to get caught up in all the negativity that's going on around us. And I think when that happens to you, you get so focused on that, you kind of lose sight of the things that you're trying to do and the things that you're trying to accomplish within your own life. So I think now is a better time, if not more than ever, to be more focused and to be more... I'm not a fan of loud cars. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not a fan of loud cars whatsoever. But anyway, I think now's a good time to stay focused, to stay purpose-driven, and, you know, continue to be around like-minded individuals. That doesn't necessarily say, like, be in an echo chamber or whatever the case may be, but, you know, continue to be around like-minded individuals, because at the end of the day, you're only as strong as the people that you surround yourself with. And you don't have to surround yourself with a lot of people, but the people you surround yourself with definitely does matter in the long run. So, you know, just some things to keep in mind. Anyway, this is Monday. Don't do anything stupid. And I'll see y'all Wednesday and Friday. Peace.